These kids have been out here carrying guns for over a year and a half. A year and a half time they start school. Some of them carrying guns because they're up to no good. Most of them carrying guns because they're afraid.
Good evening, this is Dr. Curry.
This is Kobe Owens.
This is Jay Street.
And this is The Source. Listen, violence is all the way up. I mean, violence is up to a level that is just unbelievable. Just this week, a 14-year-old shot dead. What are we going to do with this violence? What's going on?
Well, I think it's absurd that we keep trying to do the same thing the same old way and surprised when we get the same results. And we're at 69 already, and it's just June. And I go back to when 1994, 1995, Jim Sills was the mayor, and the FOP hung a sign across Pennsylvania Avenue, "Welcome to Jim Sills Shooting Gallery." Purzycki comes in in 2017 after, on Dennis's watch, Newsweek declared Wilmington Murder Town, USA. He hires a police chief $190,000. He's going to be the cure-all, the end-all. In 2017, he set the record for shootings. And now we're right back to basically going to the same direction as that high number of 2017. Well, whose shooting gallery is it now?
Well, not just that. Looking at 2015 when we were called Murder Town USA, under this administration, the 5 years they've been in, 3 of those years they have broken that record.
Correct.
And it hasn't been by a little bit, it's been by a lot. This shooting happened right around the corner from my house. The fact is, I was driving to Home Depot, I saw the bike on the ground, and then I heard the helicopters later on, so I knew it had to be bad. Unfortunately, the young man passed away, the young child passed away. But this has to stop. This is the 6th teenager shot in the city of Wilmington this month alone.
And you know, you look at the News Journal today, and the lady's talking about her 12-year-old son who got shot, and she can't get any services. 12-year-old son shot, 13-year-old daughter traumatized as a result of it, 14-year-old friend traumatized as a result of it. And when the News Journal goes out and interviews these agencies, they're saying, what the mom said is that she has not received any services. News Journal calls social services, and all of a sudden they show up, but they can't say what they're doing. It's out of control, and now everybody is all excited. We're going back to school in September. Well, y'all ain't ready to go back to school. These kids have been out here carrying guns for over a year and a half. A year and a half time they start school. Some of them carrying guns because they're up to no good. Most of them carrying guns because they're afraid. Wow. Well, if I've had my gun on me for a year and a half, do you think I'm going back to school and either not have it or not be close by? And since the 90s, I've been telling them that they need to do random checks for weapons at the schools. Oh, nobody's willing to do it. Nobody wants to do it. But let somebody get shot in school, and they all have metal detectors in front of them. And my final thing is, what we're doing isn't working. But when's the last time somebody got locked up for putting a gun in the hand of a juvenile? You don't see that. And so how are these kids getting these guns? How are they having access? And 5 years ago, got into a big fight with Chris Coons over the federal program that was supposed to be reducing violence, and where is ATF? Where's the U.S. Marshals? Where's the FBI as it relates to getting these guns off the street and getting these drugs out of the city?
Yeah, but one of the things that we have to do is make sure that we keep a balance in what we talk about, and you're absolutely correct. But let me just be a little bit controversial in our community. As soon as aggression is shown to get the violence down or to get the guns out of the street, will we run into people saying, hey, y'all are too aggressive? Because again, you're right. I would like to see the persons who are putting these guns in our young people's hands. However, when they start getting arrested, when they start taking the street back, stopping and frisking and things of that nature, what kind of outbreak will that cause?
Well, whatever it causes, it causes. And we've got to go one day at a time, but there's no excuse. And, you've got police agencies saying that we follow social media. They knew, you got 14 indictments the other day as relates to NorthPAC. Well, they know everybody that's in NorthPAC. Why is it taking all this time for those 14 indictments? And what are you doing with the rest of these gang members that are still out there? And you know what they're doing.
Well, I guess that's probably something we're going to have to ask the chief. Is this the same police chief that has been with Buzicki since his beginning?
He brought him in right after he got elected. That's correct. The
And he was
national
supposed-
search came in out of Chicago, and he was supposed to be this guru who's going to reduce crime, and it went up instantly on his watch, and it hasn't gotten any better since.
Has anybody challenged him?
No.
Well, what are we doing now?
What are we getting ready to do
No.
now? But the point is, I'm concerned that no plan is the plan.
But why am I the elected official that's sitting here saying anything? Okay, where's everybody else at? Okay, it's not my watch, it's our watch.
Yes.
And the only thing City Council could agree on recently is we support legalizing recreational marijuana. Give me a break. All right, that's the best you can do unanimously. It's absurd.
Yeah, you use that word. I use the word egregious, and that's what we're dealing with. So one of the things I would like to do is I'm going to reach out this week to our leadership. I'm going to reach out to the mayor's office. I'm going to reach out to the chief of police and city council just to ask some questions. What is the plan? The 14-year-old young boy is now dead. A family has to live with this. Services are not available, according to what you're sharing with us, to be able to provide them with the mental stability that they may need. And it seems like, okay, another one dead. Who cares? Let's move on.
That's the whole point. Okay? One of the reasons, as many times as I've been asked to run for mayor, asked to consider it, my personality wouldn't comport with it. Because every shooting would be my fault. It's on my watch. But I don't understand how anybody sits in that chair and doesn't feel the same way. And I go back to Jim Sills. When two of my kids from the center were found murdered in Rockford Park, Jim Sills came to the funeral, he spoke at the funeral, and he made it crystal clear publicly that he was going to leave no stones unturned until the person was found. And he went to the house the day of the shooting. The last time city official that you're aware of has been to a victim's house? When's the last time they shown to a funeral? These kind of things, there's a major difference, but we can't solve we can't solve these shootings. But we got $100 million expanding the riverfront.
Right.
Well, it's interesting. I got a phone call from the News Journal on this week, and they want to interview me about my feelings with the expansion and how it's really blessing the Southbridge area. And I said to him, I will take your interview, and from the door, please note, it has not been a blessing because we have not seen anything.
Right.
Yes, the riverfront, we've seen a whole lot of expansion. At the have and the have-nots is what's going on.
But it's a tale of two cities.
Yes.
Okay? When's the last time somebody got shot in the riverfront?
Yeah, right.
Okay, and what level of protection do they have down there versus the historical city and everything that's going on? There's just a major difference, and let somebody get shot down the riverfront and watch everything in the city and state stop.
So you're saying to me that the value of those at the riverfront, those lives are much
Important.
more valued than those who are in the South Bridge section or the east side of the city.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's not good.
And if you disagree, show cause.
Yeah, well, these are some of the challenges that we're going to have to make sure we raise to those individuals. And I will promise those of you who are watching us that we will have a response, even if they decline to come on this show and decline to make comments. You will know that, and you will know who we spoke to, because at this point, it's really a matter of lives mattering.
It's a matter of life and death.
Yeah, at this point, 14-year-old. A 14-year-old, that's what we want to keep in our head. This child is not even in the 10th grade yet. You know, at some point, matter of fact, 8th grade, and at some point we have to start valuing the lives of our young people. And I'm one who believe that we need to be aggressive. I'm not saying police brutality is what I support, because I do not. But I think that we do need to be aggressive in making sure that we combat it, because like you said, if the riverfront, we have no murders, no shooting down there. What system are they using down there that they're not using up here? What type of security is going on? I don't know.
They have a police presence. They have investment from the government side of things, and they're building things up. Now, you can have expansion of a city, and you can do that without displacement. You can have investment into an area, and you can actually invest in the people who are there already, not trying to bring new people in. That's what the difference is right now. We don't have a police presence really over North Side. It's, you go down to the riverfront any given time, you're seeing 3, 4, 5 police cars circling that small area.
Yes.
Well, let me, here's what I know that I'm not supposed to know. When Dennis was the mayor, here come the governor, here come the attorney general, other state officials. If you don't change this, that, and the other, we're going to take the city charter.
I remember that.
Okay?
I remember that.
Now, Pazicki comes in, breaks the record from the door on his watch, headed toward that way now. Is anybody talking about taking the charter? No. We're going to support the $100 million expansion of the river. It's fundamentally unfair, flat out rotten, and nobody's harmless here.
That's
okay,
right.
Everybody has a responsibility to protect these young people, to get these guns off the street, to get these drugs off the street, and to address, because some of the shootings are just foolishness over something somebody said on social media. But we're allegedly monitoring social media. Well, monitoring to what end? Because nothing's changing. It's getting progressively worse.
Right. Well, I will say this: we're gonna have to do better. We're gonna have to be better. But some of this talk is just wasteful in that people are not responding. And I think our community, our representation, who is the representative of this district? I know the name of the city council person. Why is it that they have both? She has both, the riverfront and South Bridge, and yet the riverfront is getting everything, and there's no real push for South Bridge to get anything. And I'm not just talking about South Bridge. Let's talk about across the city. Across the city.
But let's talk about, okay, and I'm not going to blame the city councilwoman because it's out of her hands. She's not in charge. The administration is running the city and has unequivocal support to expand the riverfront. But Wilmington, Delaware is probably the only city in the United States of America where a housing authority can come in and tear down square blocks of public housing and not be required to replace it anywhere.
Yeah.
Happened in Southbridge, happened in Riverside, and everybody's standing idly by. Just let them do what they want to do.
Listen, we're going to take a break, and I just want to say that for those of you who are watching us, this 14-year-old who was killed on the street, cold blood, we don't know all the details as of right now, but what we do know as a fact is that a 14-year-old is dead. We are saddened. We are saddened for his family and those who love him. And at some point, Mr. Mayor, some point, City Council, a plan has to be devised and executed. And we can't bring in top-notch, in charge folks who know how to do everything but fail. But when time comes to execute the plan, all we get is failure. So we're going to look at this quick video of this shooting, and we'll be right back.
Wilmington police said a 14-year-old boy was shot and killed shortly before 6 p.m. Tuesday. Police said the boy was shot on the 500 block of West 35th Street and died at the hospital. No other information was released Tuesday.
And we're back. Listen, a few weeks ago, while Jay was not at the nursing home, he made a comment to Kobe, and it sparked my intellectual curiosity as we were talking about the filibuster and democracy and all this other stuff. And you may say, well, we in Wilmington, we're a Democratic state, and we shouldn't have to worry about that. But in actuality, on the national level, this whole voters' right and this voter suppression and all that stuff that's going on really has to do with us. And it won't be long before we probably will have to face some of the things that we have to face. So today, I just wanted to, we pulled Jay back in. He only liked to come around every once in a while. But I need to debate this issue to really hear what Jay has to say, what Kobe has to say, to try to get you to have a great understanding and a strong understanding of this whole filibuster. I always thought that when you elect the majority to Congress, we ought to follow their agenda. That's why I always tell you to vote. But Jay, I'm gonna let you start. Tell me why we should not do away with the filibuster.
Well, one of the concerns I have is historically, when the president is reelected, when the president is elected, the midterm elections usually favor the other party. So how long are we really going to have so-called control of the Senate? It's a matter of what happens next year. The same way with the House. And the pundits are predicting that we're going to lose the House and we're going to lose the Senate. At which point, you take away the filibuster now. Well, if you take away now, then when the Republicans take charge, they don't need it. They can do what they want to do. The only in between is Biden will veto everything they bring forward, and so we've got 2 years of hope, but the country's going to be in a stalemate.
Yeah, but you said, they're going to do what they do, but what's to stop them when they take control from doing what we think the Democrats should do right now, and that is to blow up the filibuster? What will stop them?
Nothing's going to stop them. But so, if we do it now, it's going to make it worse. However, I hate to tell you this because I know you wanted to have a robust debate. I'm not so sure you're wrong. Because the fact of the matter is, when it's to the point you got two Democrats stopping everything, and you have Senator Manchin who puts forward his own proposal trying to get Republican support, he gets zero support. And then you asked the Republican last night, the Democratic senator from Arizona, she's asked a question and she busts out laughing. Well, what's funny about denying people the right to vote? And all this foolishness is going on across the country, trying to stop people from voting when there's been no voter fraud, there's been no problem, but yet 48 states have pending legislation to suppress the vote.
Something has to be fundamental. I'm going to come right to you, Brother Kobe. But something has to be fundamentally wrong when the majority of the country disagrees with the lie or agree that it is a lie. They agree that it is a lie. And yet we're worried about maintaining the House. We're worried about whether or not the Republicans will be in charge and we get rid of this filibuster. Something has to be wrong If the country want us to go in the direction in which the Republicans are prescribing to, then maybe this is not the America we thought of.
Well, in my opinion,
Okay.
this is no joke. Democracy's on the ropes.
Yes.
Okay? If January 6th, if the National Guard hadn't finally got there, Trump may very well have had his way. Some congressional people may very well have gotten hurt.
Yes.
And
died.
Absolutely. And when it's to the point where the fundamental right we have in the democracy is to vote, and now you've got this legislation in Georgia where not only they're going to suppress the vote, but you put in place election officials who can change the vote.
Yeah.
They can overturn the will of the voters. And at this point, Republicans know they're in the minority. They know they're not going to have minority support. The country is becoming a minority country, and they can't stand it. So the only thing you can do is go to a dictatorship, and that's the direction we're headed in.
But let me
and
just-
if this voting legislation didn't pass and signed into law, as a nation, we're in trouble.
So what is wrong then with us getting rid of the filibuster? And once we get rid of the filibuster, the Republicans take control of the House, Joe Biden can veto for the next 2 years at least anything they want to bring forward. But guess what's on the line? You just said it. Democracy.
Democracy's on the
And to
line.
have Joe Manchin to be as he put forth a plan and they didn't even support it. Do you really believe we should care who comes behind us when our democracy is at risk?
I don't think we should stand idly by and not do everything we can as a nation and as a people to keep democracy. But Manchin won by 2 or 3 percentage points. Sienna, whatever her name is,
So no.
won by 2 or 3 percentage points. But they just won. They have 6 years. I don't understand their fear. But the pressure's got to be put on those two, or everything else is going to fail.
Kobe, we didn't mean it. We're not trying to keep the millennial voice out of this, but it's just that the anger is there to where I don't get it. But you talk to me a little bit.
So first, I think, one, we should break down what is the filibuster, right?
Okay.
So the filibuster is this procedural rule that's used in the Senate that says for any vote on legislation, you need 60 yes votes to end the debate, to stop the debate from going on. If you don't have the 60, the debate stays open, right? And if we look at the makeup of the Senate, the first 230 years of the U.S. Senate, everything was just passed with a simple majority. There was no filibuster. The filibuster was brought in to be used as a tool for the minority party to have that check and balance, right? But then you look at what it's being used for now. Originally, when it came in, you had to have 66 votes to end the filibuster. Then it became a talking filibuster. So that's where you had the Storm Thurmonds from South Carolina and the Harry Byrds from West Virginia, who stood up and fought against civil rights, right? The Civil Rights Act being passed. That was used probably once a year. They would use the filibuster. Now the filibuster is used every single day in the Senate, simply because the people in the minority are not getting their way. They have no incentive to come to the table because they can simply say, we're not going to do this. Where you used to have judges in or on all level, federal level, or the Supreme Court, you would have that filibuster. They got rid of that so that they can move forward with the legislation. The filibuster is undemocratic, and it's not required by the Constitution.
Okay.
So when we're looking at what is on the line right now, we're looking at the For the People's Act. We're looking at the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act. But we're looking at more than just voting in democracy. We're looking at immigration reform, comprehensive gun reform that we keep talking about in this nation. We're looking at the PRO Act, which is building stronger unions. These are all on the line and being held up because Mitch McConnell and the Republicans are using the filibuster. On top of that, you have Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, who are fighting to keep that rule in place because they're in the same mindset. What happens if we are in the minority? Well, let me tell you this. People will come out to vote if you give them a reason to.
Thank you. Yes. Okay.
The fact is, both these parties have gotten in the mindset of, oh, don't vote for him, he's a Republican. Don't vote for him, he's a Democrat. That's not good enough.
Right.
How about you start passing some legislation that possibly benefits the American people?
Right.
Now, we said we don't want no more of the other guy in his party. We want Democrats in charge. We gave you the House, the Senate, and the White House.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do with it?
Yeah.
So Biden, he's in the White House now.
Right.
And look, you could tell from his talks. He originally thought he was going to be able to work with the Republicans. He did try to work with them. But now he even said it. All right, I gave it my all. They don't want to come along. We got to do it our own way. That's why they're going with reconciliation for the budget and also for the infrastructure bill. But that's not going to work for everything.
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
everything can go into reconciliation. That's why it's so important for the filibuster to be ended or modified at this point. Because right now, the people who are losing out are the American people.
And not only are we losing out, again, democracy. Democracy is at a point where the small majority of this country who hate those who are minorities are getting their way. I have not seen a person, and we joke sometimes. You and I have joked about this, where don't get mad at Mitch because he knows the rules. He knows how to play by the rules. But rules are only effective when they are helping the people of its society. The filibuster, as you said, it's not something that we have to. If I elected 51 people or 50 people to be in Congress and happen to show the White House is a Democratic person, we need to be going off of their agenda. That's that's what and for the last two Republican presidents, they didn't even win the popular vote, which speaks to this whole system that they have put together that is a problem itself.
And that's why these voting bills are so important to get passed. Also, if you look at how the voting bills are written, anti-corruption aspect of it, access to voting just for everyday people, I can guarantee you more Democrats will be able to get to vote. Because if you look at what's going on in Georgia right now with their Secretary of State, they just purged another 100,000 people off the voter rolls.
Unbelievable.
They are going for Reverend Warnock's seat. If you look at what's happening in Arizona, Texas, they're trying to hold on to seats or flip their seats back to Republican. So these bills would stop that. That will empower people to be able to get to the polls and their vote to truly matter, where it is a simple majority for these seats, for the U.S. House, for the U.S. Senate. You just have to have more votes than the other party in order to win. Whereas you have the Electoral College for the presidential level. But also, I think at the very core of the ending the filibuster, after passing the For the People's Act and the John Lewis Act, the third thing they need to do is pass D.C. statehood. D.C. statehood would give representation to over 700,000 majority African American people down in D.C. It would also give them free reign if there is another insurrection and they have to bring in the National Guard. D.C. would have the power to do that. They wouldn't have to wait for congressional approval or federal approval for that. The fact is, if you look at what's going on, that's most likely going to bring in 2 more Democratic senators. That's going to help keep Georgia a fair and open state for voting. That's going to create the ground zero of voter suppression right now is Texas, and it has been Texas since about 2014. That will change their laws, and you will see Texas change their who's in office, their representation. Yeah. So that's why it's so important. You have to have the ability to say, look, it may be rough. We may lose some battles, But overall, this is going to benefit the mass majority of people.
And at the end of the day, this issue that's on the table, is about our democracy. By any means necessary, one of our great leaders made that comment. He and Dr. King was in a tough discussion, and there were those who believed that we should be nonviolent, and then there were those who believed we need to take back by force. I'm not advocating, I'm not putting y'all in no position where y'all have to go out and explain to folks, but I am saying this: when it comes down to our democracy, people died. We only been voting as black people in this country about 50 years, my lifetime. At some point, we got to recognize they want that taken. And for Joe Manchin and anyone who is a Democrat to say, we support voting rights, but we're not going to break a rule that is not even democratic. I don't know if I agree to that.
And I'm glad you brought up Dr. King and the nonviolent movement. 60 years ago, you had the Freedom Rides. And they were originally supposed to go to New Orleans, but they were met with so much hatred and violence, they stopped in Birmingham. Just earlier this week, you saw a new Freedom Ride campaign kick off in New Orleans, and it's making its way through the South right now. It will be in D.C. Today. They are moving through the South, galvanizing support and energizing people. And I talked about it a little last week with Black Voters Matter. The NAACP has joined on. Faith leaders have joined on. Until Freedom has joined on. You have civil rights organization. You have activists. You have just everyday people joining in this fight, and people from every race, every gender, every religion, all coming together to fight for voting rights in the South. And that's galvanizing support there. But it can't stop there. On Tuesday of this week, you had 12 activists arrested outside of Kristen Sinema's office in Arizona, calling for her to change her position on the filibuster. In West Virginia, this week as well, too, you have the Poor People's Campaign, led by Dr. Reverend Barber, who are doing actions, doing a march on Manchin to get him to change his. And it's not just the black West Virginians. They are partnering with unions. They are partnering with the biggest coal mining union. They are bringing the working class poor to the table as well, too. White and black working together to say we all want our voting rights protected, and we have to do this together. And then on Thursday, you saw thousands of people gather in D.C., and you saw hundreds arrested in nonviolent civil disobedience. That is what we're going to need, to be able to put our bodies on the line, if you have that privilege, to say, look, I'm standing up for our democracy. We've made the calls, we made the emails. Now I'm putting my body here, because you can't ignore that.
That's right. You know, and it's funny because, not funny, no, excuse me, it's not funny, it's interesting. That you have all of this movement who's trying to do things peaceful. Jay, you were brought up in an era where everything wasn't so peaceful. Unless I'm misquoting.
No, the fact of the matter is, and you talked about by any means necessary, in the 60s, and Huey Newton, H. Rap Brown saying violence is as American as cherry pie. Huey Newton saying by any means necessary. In my generation, we did a little of both. We sat in, we marched, and then we also did some things we shouldn't have done. But we made progress. You know, I look at things we did at the University of Delaware when I was a student. Minority Affairs Board, Black Cultural Center, Black History Department, and brought Black Greek letter organizations to the university. Well, that didn't happen without confrontation.
Right.
And, you know, unfortunately, I look back now, 50 years later, nothing of substance has been done since we left. But in the big scheme of things, nation's in trouble.
Yeah.
And if anybody thinks Delaware is exempt,
Yeah.
You know, I remember having Republican governors.
Right.
I remember one house or both sides of the General Assembly be controlled by Republicans. And now you've got these far right, far right folks running the Republican Party. And you look at Sussex County and the stronghold they have down there, don't think that can't spread. And don't think we're exempt. And we've got work to do. Because democracy is in trouble. And if democracy does not prevail, who's going to suffer is the minority citizens of the country, this state, and this city. And it's not going to be life as we know it now if it changes.
You know, when Trump started out, the Republicans said he's a joke. He only going to last for a couple of weeks. He gained just piggybacking off of what you just said. He and he went to rolling and never stopped rolling. People who were conservative, like a Lindsey Graham, people who's I'll never be a Trumper. They called him all kind of liars, and as he continued to roll, now they are kissing his ring on every turn.
But how pitiful is it? He talks about your wife, talks about your father, and you still kiss his behind.
Yeah, but see, that's what I'm.
And you know, there's just no substance of their character.
Right.
But there's only one thing that unites them, and that's great hatred and disdain for people of color.
Yes.
And if you look at what really has he done and all that right-wing foolishness done for the people that support them, the only thing it's done is brought them together with their great disdain for people of color.
Yeah.
He hasn't done anything for them. Their lifestyle hasn't changed, but it's all about white versus brown and black. And they're trying to turn America in to what South Africa was before Nelson Mandela.
Right.
That's where they're trying to go. And if anybody thinks it's a joke, you're sadly mistaken. If anybody thinks Delaware is exempt, you're sadly mistaken.
And that's one of the reasons why it's important that we continue to fight the fight and continue to raise issues, even with that in our community. We talked about earlier about the violence. We have to deal with this. And then most of our shows, I've talked about voting. We got to vote. We have to vote people in. I remember when Dennis Williams was rerunning for election, and we had 55,000 black people decide to jump in the race because he was running. I'm not saying he was the perfect mayor. I don't want to get into that. I supported him. I'm not going to deny what I did. But you had 55,000 black people get in the race. They wanted to make sure they stopped him. They neutralized it and allowed somebody to win by a very, very small margin of
200 votes.
Thank you. You remembered it.
200 votes.
And what I want to make sure we get out of this segment of this part of the show is that with this filibuster, all of it, and I want to agree with Brother Kobe too, when he made the comment, it's not a black thing as it relates to the filibuster, okay? It's going to hurt, voter rights going to hurt some white folks too.
Right.
It's about the poor folks that it's going to be hurting. But where Jay and I am certainly coming at right now is that a lot of this stuff that is going on is because we want to keep America white, or we want to make America white again. And the fear that it is going to become minority is causing people to come together. I used to say here at the church that you can have two enemies who can't stand each other, but they will come together if they want to get rid of you. And that's where we are now. If they want to get rid of the minorities, what they have to do is they have to come together. And to hear a Lindsey Graham, what's that, Ted Cruz, and those individuals talk about his wife, talk about his father. That's fighting words in my community.
Well, but you know, when you got gutless people on that side of the political spectrum, that's what you have. They're stuck with it. But you know, this violence. Well, every city in the country is having a problem. Well, we're overrepresented of incarceration in the prison system. Our men or the majority there. And we've allowed these guns into our city in the hands of our children. But when people say it's by design, they're all crazy. I don't think so. And you know, as long as it's our young people shooting each other, they don't care.
That's right.
As long as it's our young people dying, the system doesn't care. And because it's nationwide, that's no excuse. And you know, fighting over drugs that don't grow in this country, can't be raised here. All these things, and you talk about systemic challenges, these are the challenges that we're facing. But maybe 15 years ago, there was a city council person, and I can't find it, but it was in Detroit or Milwaukee, and he said, y'all think it's a big joke, and nobody cares about these young people having these guns. As long as they're shooting each other and killing each other, it's just fine. But one day, somebody's gonna come along and organize them, and then y'all gonna have a problem that you're not gonna be able to deal with.
And that's where we are now.
That's exactly where we are.
Well, you ready to say something, Brother Kobe?
No, I just agree with you on that, and I think we still have a lot of work to do. And in closing for this, at least I'll say that the filibuster is a procedure thing. It has to go, or it has to change, or we're really going to be doomed. And
I'm in a 100% agreement that it has to go. I don't even care about the change part because it's democracy on the line. If it was about a budget, about whether $1 million could be added or taken from the budget, we can do 500 votes. I don't care about that. But when you come down to democracy, I think that needs to be preserved at all by all means. And January 6th shows us that we are only one shoestring away from this whole thing falling apart. Or by design, Trump did not allow the what you call those folks? National Guard to come in. These people put their lives on the line for our democracy, and for us not to want to protect it.
And then you got 21 Republicans
that
would not say thank you.
Egregious. That's horrible.
And every time I come over here, I'm commending Kobe. But to me, you're unique and you're special. I never left home. I was down at the University of Delaware, called my dad and said, I'm homesick. He said, well, bring your such and such home then. Get on the bus and come home. So I've been born and raised here, and I'm just a local guy, community activist, elected official, and I haven't ever made any attempt to play on the national level, play on the national stage. But as I sit here, and you 26 years old, and understand the whole national level, and being able, you playing and having the knowledge and insight you have about national politics, I'm just so proud of you. And it's knowledge that you've acquired that most people that I know don't have.
And let me share that because that's why I asked him to join us as being a part of this show. But we're going to come back in a second because what I want to do is I want to talk about he's leaving this show today to go down to Washington. We tape early in the week, and he may be one of the people who's going to get arrested. And he's made it very clear he's feeling it doesn't matter. It's about the people. We'll be right back.
I'm getting vaccinated against COVID-19. Yes, there could be some short-term side effects from the vaccine, but they go away in a day or two. Those are signs that my body's building protection. It's worth it to avoid serious problems from COVID-19 disease.
As Brother Jay was just sharing how we all are very proud of you, and this, shame on Wilmington that Wilmington did not elect you as leader representative. But whenever you're for the people, it's very hard to get elected. Those who want to sell fish sandwiches and things like that is easier. But, Kobe, it is impressive. I am not a millennial. I'm an Xer, and I take risk, okay? But you are taking risk now that is far beyond. Jay said he went to University of Delaware. I'm from Philadelphia. I went to Lincoln. I stayed nearby. All of my education was in the Pennsylvania system, most of it, pretty much. And you went all the way down to West Virginia 1,
Yeah.
and now you have not stopped. Once you saw racism, once you saw the ugly head of it, you said, my job is to support the voice that can't be heard.
But didn't you see it here first?
I did.
I just want to get that in there. Didn't start in West Virginia.
Oh,
It
no.
started right here.
Okay.
I will say this: Delaware is different from West Virginia because in West Virginia they're just extremely open with it.
Okay.
Delaware, you got to pay attention.
Okay.
Down south,
Okay.
they just open with it.
It's over with. Okay. And you also saw real fighters.
Yeah.
Like this guy over here.
Yeah.
Okay, I forgot your name that fast. but tell me, something is getting ready to happen in Washington. We do our show a little, tape it a little bit earlier, and to my understanding, there may be a possibility of you even being arrested.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, like we were just talking about in the last segment, that when democracy is on the line, when something that is so important to so many people are on the line, and you have a privilege yourself to be able to be on the battleground, on the front lines, you have to do everything possible. Like I said, we've organized, we've got millions and millions of people who have marched to the polls, who have made calls, who've sent emails, who have begged to have their right protected. And it's still going and falling on the ears of senators who don't want to pay attention. So what we're doing is working with civil rights activists, whether they're from the NAACP, ACLU, For the People, CPT Action, United, Until Freedom, United We All, United We Dream. We are all coming together because we all have a stake in this. And some people may care more about a different piece of legislation that's being held up by the filibuster, but we also understand that voting is the central point of it all. So we have, over 10,000 people have signed up to come and meet us in DC, and about 100 of us are going to risk arrest. Whether that's doing a sit-in, shutting down DC roads, shutting down entrances to buildings in order for senators to really hear us out, we will be risking our own bodies and risking arrest for that. I'm not new to this.
Okay.
We will have first-time people who now feel activated to get involved. I've been arrested 12 times before in DC. And it's been for, the very first time I was arrested was with Reverend Warnock and Reverend Barber fighting back against the ACA repeal. I've been arrested fighting for women's rights. I've been arrested fighting for immigration rights, for civil rights. Putting my body on the line and being able to help other people participate in that is something I'm very good at, but also everyone has a role in the movement.
Okay.
I understand not everyone can get arrested, but I can.
Okay.
That's why I do my own thing. But when getting arrested, you need a strong team around you. And that's why I say everyone plays a role. And once we are in jail, and we haven't even made our minds up yet, if we're gonna do just a simple arrestable action and get out, a few hours later, or are we gonna withhold giving our names and identifying who we are so that we do a jail strike. And I've done that before, where we withheld our names and we stayed in jail until we got a letter from the majority leader or from the Speaker of the House or Democratic leadership at the time, committing themselves to pushing harder on a certain piece of legislation or actually passing it. So we are still, it's happening tomorrow, Thursday. But we plan everything up until the last second, and things change as the voting changes, as different speeches come up. Our targets of who we really need to bring out and bring attention to change as well too.
Wow, Jay, this seems like it's going to be interesting.
Well, I'm so proud of you, the way you're standing up and your knowledge and your expertise, but I'm also having flashbacks sitting here. I remember Reverend Morgan describing when they went to integrate the Deer Park, and the waitress came over and said, well, can we have some water? And he said when they brought the water back, they poured it over their heads. And, you know, watching him as an elder repeat that story, I did everything but cry. Of course, I didn't want him to see me crying. But that's why I don't care what the deer park is named, who owns it, I'll never go there. And when you go to the 60s, and I can hear my father now as if he was still living, you know, there was a black beach and a white beach. Black folks weren't allowed to Rehoboth. So after the Civil Rights Act, my father said, and you better not, they didn't want you up there before the Civil Rights Act, you better not take your behind up there after the Civil Rights Act. And all these restaurants in the city where you couldn't go in and sit down, they've changed names, they've changed owners, I still don't go in them. Because I can hear my father saying, they didn't want you in there before the Civil Rights Act and before public accommodations. I better not catch you in there now. But it's the same thing all over again. We're repeating, but it worked before, and hopefully with young people like you all across this country coming together, it'll work again. But democracy's in trouble.
It's in trouble.
It is. And, you know, one thing about what we're doing and what I've done in the past is always used nonviolent civil disobedience as a way forward whenever we do our actions. It's more than just a arrestable moment. It does take a toll on your psyche because you are usually met with resistance and with hatred and violence sometimes. I've been beat by the cops doing nonviolence, for sitting, for laying, you know, so that is something that we also try to prepare people for. And one of the key teachings of Dr. King was that you have to be nonviolent externally, which means physically not doing on to harm to other people, but also internally with your spirit. You cannot allow that hate to overtake you, because then that will cause physical hatred as well too. So it's two aspects to it. It's, you know, and for me, I've studied it, I've implemented it. I've worked with scholars from all around the world on teaching this to other people as well too. But in the moment, it's always the adrenaline's going. You never know what's going to happen, and that's again why the key principles of doing it the right way is so important. Making sure that one, you return home at the end of the day, and two, that the people who are with you are not harmed in a way that they do not get to see their loved ones again.
Yeah.
And see, that's the difference between you and some of these other organizers. You know, I listen to you, and you had your own security force. You had bail bondsmen in place. You had lawyers in place. And you've had these other people calling themselves putting on protests and demonstrations, don't know a bail bondsman, had no lawyers, don't have security, and you're asking people to come out and support a cause, but you're not putting in place the things that you need to put in place to protect the people that you want to help save democracy or change whatever it is that you're protesting and want to change. And that's where the training and the expertise of others across the country have come in and been an asset to you, I think.
Whether, you know, I look at it as whether I'm doing a 10 or 20 person action here in Delaware where, you know, a small rally or something, or we're doing a 50,000 to 100,000 person march down in DC, I always use the same tactics. I always will have at least one lawyer on call. And it's not just me. My whole entire team will have that number. We'll have the bail bondsman. We'll have all that stuff ready in case one person gets in trouble, in case one person that gets arrested, so that we don't leave them behind. I think that is the worst thing possible for any organizer to do, is to watch someone get arrested at their event and then leave them to fend for themselves.
Yeah, Jake was joking with you, but I think he really meant it. He said, when you get arrested, if you get arrested, stay peaceful, but go limp. Make them pick you up and carry you, and that will wear them out, so that they recognize this is a true battle. The only thing for evil to prevail or prevail, this is Dr. King, not exact quote, but somewhat of his quote, is for good people to say nothing and do nothing. And what I'm impressed with is that you're willing to put your life on the line and do something. I say to those of you who are watching us, whether you are in the state of Delaware or across this country, you have to do something. Mom Mabley said, and Jay kind of alluded to it earlier, if you continue to do what you've always done, you're going to continue to get what you always got. We deserve better. We deserve more. But somebody have to come in with the sacrifice. At what point will you do that? We'll be right back. And we're back. Well, it's been a great show. Kobe, what's on your mind?
Yeah, so, as we're still facing high gun violence here in the city, I just want everyone who's in the city or in the state, if you care about what's going on in our streets, please reach out to your elected official and tell them that now is the time to put aside their political differences and work together, especially for these young kids. It is out of control. The fact that 6 young teenagers have been shot, with one of them passing away on Wednesday or on Tuesday, is just unacceptable for a small state in a small city like we are. Mm-hmm. So please make those calls, reach out to them, tell them to invest in our communities.
Yes. What about your SB 12?
Yeah, so SB 12 is just passed the Senate in the House. It's going to the governor's desk. So is the Inspire Scholarship as well, too. Okay. Expanding opportunities to educate people, to get a higher education from the state. It's, as we wind down, June 30th is the deadline. It's legislation like this that is going to be critical, because it's one thing no one can ever take away from you, and that's your education. Absolutely.
Brother Street, it was so great having you with us today. And you told us on TV that you would not be here. But we see you sitting here, and I'm going to tell you why you're sitting here. By divine design. He does not know that I'm a true preacher. I'm a true pastor. I know how to talk to God. I said to God, he needs to be here. God got you here. And put him on a 3-piece suit, too. That's what I'm talking about. Anything on your mind, Brother Street?
Well, what's on my mind is, and I guess Al Plant, I don't think it was his original, but he's the first one I heard say it. If you don't stand for something, you might fall for anything. And we're in a situation now in this town as it relates to violence. And about 2 months ago, I just made a resolution, urging that we develop a comprehensive plan to reduce the violence and try to include the city of Wilmington to the extent practical. County Council passed that unanimously. I convened a meeting with the mayor and the county exec. They committed to putting together this plan. They're working on it. So I didn't want to sit here and be completely critical. I know that effort is being made, and I know there's contact now with school officials to try to develop that plan, and I just hope it comes to fruition. What's here in terms of what Kobe just talked about, I'm 3.5 years into school funding litigation where NAACP and organization that I formed, Delawareans for Educational Opportunities, sued the state and all the counties for additional resources. That's going to end up being an additional $100 million a year for low-income students. But at the end of the day, if you're not doing the things that we need to get our kids into and through college, you haven't completed the job. And for far too long, our institutions have been full of students from out of state, and at $20-some thousand a year, almost impossible for our kids with good grades to attend. And so this is a big help and a major asset, and I'm looking forward to seeing that legislation signed into law.
Good. Amen. Anything else on your mind, Bucko?
Nothing else.
Well, let me just say again, vote, 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 vote. Put that in your spirit. Do not let it pass by. We are in turmoil right now. Our country needs you. For those of you who are watching us, wherever you are, you have to talk to your Congress people as well as your senators. Remind them they're there to represent the people. They're not there to worry about a $174,000 job and free parking at the airport, because most of their decisions is based on the fact whether or not I'll get reelected. But you have to have that same mindset, and we have to have them having that same mindset that in order for me to represent my people, I must do what is right. What is required from the people that I represent. And right now we are in a very, very strong quandary where we don't know what's going to happen. We have elected a Democratic president. We have elected the House and the Senate to be Democratic, but yet we can't do anything. I stand on the side, we need to do away with the filibuster. We need to do away with it because of the democracy is at hand. And whatever happens, as a result of us doing that, at least we will have our democracy and we'll get through whatever else they would like to pass. At the end of the day, we are Americans. While many of us were born in different, well, we were born here, but our ethnicity is from other places. We are a part of this country and we deserve to receive and benefit the exact same things as everyone else. I really want to thank everybody for watching us, and I hope you enjoyed the show today. And listen, you are free to make sure that you follow us on Facebook, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And listen, our YouTube channel is Easy on Fair Baptist Church, and you can continue to watch these different shows that we have. It's important that you stay connected. Until the next time, this is Dr. Curry.
This is Kobe Owens.
Jay Street, a month later, I'll see you.
And this is The Source. God bless.